Were you aware that we can use plants and bacteria to extract copper? Wow! If you weren't, this is everything you'll need to know about that for your chemistry paper 2, higher tier only. So, since copper ores are becoming more scarce, we've had to develop new ways of extracting copper. One way of doing this is using plants. So you can take your plants, grow it on that copper-rich soil or copper-rich waste, and then you extract your plants, burn them, and from the ash you can extract the copper. That's because the plants would have absorbed the copper into their roots and made copper compounds, something like copper sulfate, for example. Then you just need to extract the copper from the compounds. You can do that using either electrolysis, which would separate the ions, or you could use a displacement reaction with a metal that's more reactive than copper. So we could use something like scrap iron, for example. That use of plants was called phytomining. Another very creative method of extracting metals would be by using bacteria. This would be called bioleaching. Simply take your bacteria, grow them on this metal ore, and they produce this solution, this leachate solution, which would contain loads of metal ions. Again, mainly we're talking about the extraction of copper using bioleaching or phytomining. So if we were extracting copper ions, we could again separate these using electrolysis or a displacement reaction with something more reactive than copper, like iron. The spec specifically says you need to be able to evaluate these different methods of extracting metals. Bioleaching and phytomining are brilliant for extracting low-grade ores. That's basically extracting these metals where there's not very much of them in the area of rock, for example. So it's not really worth that massive process of mining, transporting rock and extracting the metal. Avoiding that process of mining, they produce much less environmental damage as well, much better for the environment. Phytomining would be excellent for extracting contaminants from contaminated land. Also, methods like bioleaching in particular require much less energy. That means they're much lower tech and therefore lower cost as well. There are, of course, obvious disadvantages though. This whole process of bioleaching or phytomining, much longer, slower process. It would take months to extract your metals these ways. Phytomining, growing lots of plants, that's going to require lots of land too. That could be an issue. Bioleaching could also produce toxic chemicals, things like sulfuric acid, which is not ideal. So for your exam, be ready to evaluate these different methods. They'll give you data for you to evaluate from. And if you got all that, you're going to be fine. If you didn't quite get it, let's just run through again. Best of luck tomorrow.